good-hearted, evolved person likes to think that good-hearted, evolved people know the truth when they hear this kind of thing from the president, when they see him on social media. And now time for some straight talk, because out of the blue this weekend comes a big assist for Donald Trump in the form of a Black Lives Matter protest in Pittsburgh. Perhaps you've seen the video. President tweeted about this as well, and right on schedule. People are eating outside. They're accosted by protesters. They got in the face of people. Food was eaten off their plates. Stuff was broken. People were taunted. This is as intolerant as the worst of the right. I think we can agree. This is a clear favor to Donald Trump. And Steve, you saw on social media yourself a million references in some form or fashion, people saying this is how Trump wins. So, Steve Schmidt, what's the challenge to the left to navigate these waters?
Well, I think, good evening, Brian. Good evening, Gene. I think it's important to remember that when we talk about John Lewis, when we talk about Martin Luther King, when we talk about that generation of civil rights leaders, they didn't just have great moral authority. They also had very wise political strategy. They were brilliant strategists. They were able to move public opinion. They were able to convince the majority of the country that their cause was infused with righteousness, that Bull Connor and all of them were wrong, that they were on the wrong side of history. They were on the wrong side of God's grace. They were on the wrong side of morality. This doesn't do it. Right. So when you see protests like that, it fits into the narrative that Donald Trump is trying to deliver to the country. It fits into the propaganda that you see on the Trump supporting right wing networks. And the people that are engaged in that are helping Donald Trump be reelected president of the United States. And I think it's important to understand that at this point, Trumpism is an ideology. And it was announced clearly at the Republican convention. You saw breathtaking dishonesty, utter lawlessness, and the co-option of all of the symbols of the republic for a partisan purpose to express authority over the rest of the country by the president, who stands behind that podium, who stands behind the steel of the presidency. And Trumpism needs to be confronted. It needs to be confronted on its merits. You know, when Donald Trump essentially goes out and declares through that convention, I am the truth, I am the law, I am the state, we need to push back on it as a country. But when you see the type of division, the type of intolerance, the type of mob protest where people are out there in this pandemic just trying to eat, trying to get away from it all, it feeds into this idea, to this division, which I think is a dystopian narrative of the country. But again, so much of the media is shaped by the narratives that take place out on the fringes. And so we're in a dangerous hour. Country's in a profound crisis, and Trump is trying to stoke all of this because of the central fact of the race is that we're about to see the 200,000th dead American that didn't have to be from a pandemic that rages out of control and that has just completely wiped out the American way of life over the last 9 months in this country.
Gene, I can give you... Let's continue our discussion. Still with us tonight, Eugene Robinson, Steve Schmidt. Hey, Steve, while the president was denying he ever said anything like the quotes in the Atlantic article about the military, he went on to criticize Pentagon senior leadership and, for good measure, attacked John McCain again. As remarkable as it remains that we are talking about an American president attacking a POW who was tortured to the point of physical disfigurement and spent every living, breathing day of his adult life in service to our country. Your response?
Well, of course, Donald Trump said what he is accused of saying because he said it throughout his campaign and throughout his presidency. He has repeatedly attacked the service of some of America's great heroes like John McCain, prisoners of war, famously saying he likes the people who weren't captured. They're heroes because they were captured, and that's the only reason. He has disparaged the service through his attacks on Gold Star parents. Look, we know Donald Trump said these vulgar things because he can't imagine and doesn't have it within him the ability to conceive of the love, the sacrifice, the commitment to service that so many Americans feel. So let's look ahead about a week or a couple days from now, Brian, 3 days from now, to the 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. What happened that day? We saw every cop and every fireman in the city of New York, and the surrounding boroughs, go into the towers. If they were off duty, they came. Were they suckers? Were they fools? What about the young men and women who raised their hands and took the oath to serve the country after the country was attacked on September 12th? What about them? Suckers, fools, losers? What about the men who landed on Omaha Beach or the Rangers who stormed Pointe du Hoc? Our freedoms in this country have been paid for in blood through sacrifice. From the battlefields of Lexington and Concord to Gettysburg, to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, to the Omaha and Utah beaches on Normandy, it is egregious, and it is a fundamental betrayal. This is a faithless man. This is a man demonstrating one of his great deficiencies as president. We see every day his intellectual deficiencies. He refuses to read. He refuses to prepare. We see every day his mental deficiencies, his attacks, his tweeting through the night, his anger, his rage, his distemper. This is an example of his moral deficiency. He has a total incapacity to lead. And part of the reason the country is in such a profound crisis is because of that last deficiency, which we don't talk nearly enough about, which is that moral failure. No president has ever failed his duties more spectacularly in that moral dimension. A commander-in-chief who is utterly faithless to the men and women under his command and utterly faithless to the ideas and ideals of the country that they are willing to sacrifice their lives for. It is a despicable moment in this rancid presidency, and it is a horrendous hour in the history of this country that we have a president of the United States who is so contemptuous of the guardians and the sentinels of American freedom, our military.
Steve Schmidt, our thanks. I commend to the attention of all our viewers the latest column by Eugene Robinson. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for joining us tonight. Coming up for us, the new hurdle in the push for a vaccine, the one that would coincide with the most important date on Donald Trump's calendar. That and more when we come back.